All right, it is that time. As you know, we've been looking at all the top drivers here on the channel, and it's now time for us to actually boil it down, distill it down for you to give you our top drivers of 2021. The problem with YouTube is there's a lot of great reviews on YouTube, but there are very few people who are sort of your everyman, who can shoot to you straight, who will do it from the perspective of someone who's not necessarily a Bryson DeChambeau or someone who's going to drive the ball 350 yards. I'm a guy that's probably like you. I hit it 260 yards on average. My swing speed's like 95 to 100 miles per hour. It's nothing insane. It's pretty middle of the road. I'm a 5 handicapper, so I'm a pretty good golfer. I know what I'm talking about. I've been playing for 37 years, but I am certainly not a professional. So if you're looking for an honest review and for a breakdown on the best drivers of 2021 for your game, if you're more of an average golfer, a mid-handicapper or a high handicapper even, I'm going to try to do that today. We'll have a little bit of fun, and I hope you enjoy this little breakdown of my favorite drivers of 2021. Let's do it. Here are the categories we're going to look at when it comes to best drivers of 2021. We're going to look at the stats. We're going to look at the pure stats, not just carry and distance, but we're going to look at launch angle, spin, all the good stuff there. Then we're going to take a look at forgiveness. How well do these drivers make up for your mistakes? So if you push it, pull it, if you shank it, whatever the case may be, we'll find out what happens with each of these drivers. We're also going to talk about just pure accuracy. How accurate, pinpoint accurate can these drivers get you? We're gonna look at the looks, feel, and sound. I've sort of put all those categories together into one, just to give you an idea of the aesthetics and the overall experience with these drivers. That's definitely a subjective category, but I'll at least tell you what I'm thinking there. And we're gonna talk about value. What is going to get you the biggest bang for your buck? And at the end, we're gonna crown my pound for pound champion, what I think is the best driver of 2021. And I've gotta tell you, it's gonna surprise you, so make sure you stick around for that one. So we're gonna be covering 7 brands here today. We're gonna be looking at Ping, Mizuno, Titleist, Srixon, Cobra, Taylormade, Callaway. Jeez, there's a lot of drivers. Oh my God. I've been doing this for weeks. It's been tough. My body is sore. I'm an old man. All right, those are the drivers we're going to be covering. And here's the testing conditions. I tested these all in the exact same simulator, so we use the same setup every single time. I also used my own balls. So I brought my Encore Vero X1. That's my gamer in terms of balls. And so we tested all of these drivers with the exact same balls in the same conditions. Now, they were tested on different days, but sometimes we did 2 or 3 in a day. Probably 3 or 4 sessions, all of these drivers were done. And what I tried to do was match my swing speeds as close as possible for you here. There's going to be a little bit of variance there just because, listen, you can't swing 7 drivers all one day, but we did the best we could here. And in fact, if I thought that the test was not fair, I actually did it again, and we did that in the case of the Titleist TSI2. I actually redid it today, in fact, just to make sure that the stats we were getting were as accurate as they possibly could be. So we did try to stick to 2021 releases, although many of the viewers of this channel asked me to include Srixon in the test that came out, I believe, in September, so we did that. I did not include PXG in this test. That's probably the one big name driver that we did not include, and that's just because the availability for most people is just not there, so I wanted to get drivers that most people could get their hands on for themselves. Now, we will do a PXG specific episode down the road, but I want you to know why we left that one out. Now, one thing that we did not consider, and we did this purposefully, was what other reviewers here on YouTube are saying. Because, listen, again, I am a different sort of golfer from a lot of the people that review clubs on YouTube. I am not a pro golfer, and I'm not a horrible golfer. I'm somewhere in between, probably like you are as well. So I did my best not to really watch what the other reviewers were doing or saying about these clubs because I didn't want to go into this with any biases or preconceptions going in. Now, speaking of biases, I have no brand affiliation or brand loyalty to anyone out there. In fact, my bag is a complete hodgepodge, okay? I've actually been accused in the comments because I glowed over a particular club here over the last couple months that I've got some deal worked out with them, and that could not be further from the truth. In fact, they could not pay me enough to destroy your confidence in me and your trust that I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm thinking. So without further ado, let's get into it. I'm going to tell you about my favorite drivers of 2021, and I'll break them down as best I can. All right, I'm going to start off with the most subjective of all categories here, which is basically the aesthetics, the sound, and the feel of these drivers. What did I think was the best looking and feeling driver of them all? At the bottom of the list for me is going to be the Srixon ZX5. And the reason that I put it at the bottom was because it seemed actually a little undersized, believe it or not. But what's worse is it had a very tinny sound to it. It was almost like ear piercing. Now I know you kind of get a different sound when you're in a simulator bay than you might out on the course, but let me tell you, I swung all these drivers and this one absolutely sounded the worst to my ears, and so I put it at the bottom of the list here. Coming in the number 6 position in this category, which again admittedly is subjective, is the Ping G425. To me, the Ping G425 just feels a little light. I don't know why, it just feels light in my hand. I don't know if it actually is. I didn't put these on a scale or anything, but that's the way it feels to me. And it also has a very plasticky sounding sort of thud when you hit the ball. Again, just don't really like the strike. So I've got to rate these in some order. Ping G425 is in 6th position. Coming in at number 5 is going to be the Titleists. And the Titleists have a classic look and feel to them, but they're a little bit just too large. It seems too big for its own good. So moving into the number 4 spot is going to be the Cobra Radspeed. Now I do like the sort of futuristic, bright yellow kind of flashy design that they have on the bottom. But if you turn that over, I also like that it has a very classic look to it. In fact, I swung a Cobra driver for many, many years, and it retains that same sort of pyramid style shape to it. It's got some nice gloss finish to it, and I really like the way that looks. It also sounds good, and it feels good at impact. So coming in at number 4 for me is going to be the Radspeed. Coming in the number 3 spot is going to be the new Epic line, and in particular the Epic Speed is what I tested here for this. And I really like the way these look, but it reminds me of an Epic that I've been playing for many years, so there's probably that. But I do like the carbon fiber. The shape of it's absolutely perfect. The size of it's perfect. It does have more of a thuddy sound to it, and some people that's a bit of a turnoff, but to me, I'm used to it, and it sort of instills some confidence. I know when I hit that one well. I've got instantaneous feedback in terms of club feel off the face, so I'm gonna put that at number 3. Coming in at number 2 is something that's pretty wild looking, which is the Sim 2. It's really the craziest looking of all the drivers there, at least when you're looking at it from a side profile or from the underside. But when you actually turn that over, it's got a very classic and beautiful look to it. Just reminds you of all the Taylormades you've ever seen. I love the way this club feels. It has great feel to me. Absolutely love it, and I love the sound of it, so it's going to be number 2 for me. Taking the top spot for me in this category is going to be the Mizuno STZ is the one I tried. There's an STZ and an STX. I tried the Z. The STZ for me had just a classic Mizuno feel. I don't have any other way to say it. I could tell you it's buttery. I could tell you it feels smooth. Whatever the adjective is, it felt like a Mizuno, and I'm really shocked because it's the first time I've swung a Mizuno and had it feel that way, that good. Now here's the part that many of you came for, and that's the pure stats. I'm going to tell you how far these went and give you a lot of the major stats in between. Now again, if you want to deep dive into these stats a little bit more, I do recommend you check out the specific reviews of each of these. I will leave some links below to a playlist so you can check out all these videos and spend an entire day looking at these reviews. But I'm going to break down for you at least the main stats. So once again, taking my bottom spot is going to be the Srixon ZX5. Now the ZX5 had a 95.3 miles per hour club speed for me. My ball speed leaving the face was 138.2. Backspin actually looks pretty good there at 2,430 RPM. The launch angle there at 13.8 degrees, which is a little higher than some of these other ones you will see coming next. The peak height at 29 yards, my descent angle at 36 degrees, the carry distance at 228 yards, and total distance at 254 54 yards. Moving on to number 6 on our list, to me was a little bit surprising that it was this low because I did like it when I was testing it, and that just goes to show you that all of these drivers are performing incredibly. But number 6 on my list is going to be the Cobra Radspeed. Now on this day I was swinging it pretty fast, and I do think that it has to do with the aerodynamic sort of shape of this thing, but my club speed was up to 102.9, one of the highest, if not the highest. I think it was the highest in terms of club speed. My ball speed leaving the face at 140 miles per hour, my backspin at 2,173 RPM, launch angle 12.7, peak height 26 yards, my descent angle at 33 degrees, the carry at 226, just a little bit, a hair longer than that Srixon. That was actually a hair under the Srixon. That was at 228, so this is 226, and the total distance at 256 yards. Coming in the number 4 position for me, much to my dismay, because I was expecting bigger and better things from this club, at least in terms of having the previous iteration, 2 generations removed in fact, and really just did not get that leap forward that I was looking for. Now, some have said on that video that maybe I had the wrong shaft. It could be, but that shaft is pretty much the same shaft I played with all of these clubs, so I'm not so sure. Club speed was 98.5 miles per hour. The ball speed leaving the club at 142.8. Very nice, actually. Backspin at 1921 RPM. Again, people say that could have been in the shaft, maybe. Launch angle at 12.5 degrees. Peak height at 25 yards. Descent angle at 30 degrees. My carry distance, only 224 yards, and total distance 257. Now, I will say that this was a very accurate driver, more accurate than my iteration, just did not have the leap forward in terms of length that I was looking for. Coming in 4th for me is going to be the Ping G425. This is a very impressive driver when it comes to both forgiveness as well as accuracy. I really like what the Ping G425 has to offer. Here are the actual stats. In terms of club speed, I was swinging at 97 miles per hour. The ball speed leaving the club face at 140.7 miles per hour. The backspin in a good spot there at 2,388 RPM. Launch angle 12.9 degrees. Peak height 27 yards. Descent angle 34 degrees. The carry distance, we're getting a little bit better here at 231 yards, and total distance coming in at 258 yards. So the Ping G425 takes our 4th spot. Moving on to our 3rd spot is going to be the Titleist TSI2, which for me was the best setup between the TSI2 and 3, so that's why we're going to use these stats here. My club speed in this test was 95.3 miles per hour, ball speed leaving the club face at 138.2, backspin at 2,045 RPM, would have liked to see that up just a little bit higher. The launch angle, pretty high, in fact, might have been the highest of the bunch at 14.6 degrees. Peak height at 29 yards, descent angle 35 degrees. Our carry distance, a nice 232, and total distance 260 yards. Really, really good performance there. And I did test a couple of different shafts, and one of the shafts, the stats were probably about 10 yards behind, and it was actually a $250 more expensive shaft, believe it or not. But again, that was one I retested so that we could give this as close of a comparison as possible. All right, this is where it gets exciting. We're moving on to a huge shocker for me. Coming in at number 2, the new Mizuno STZ. Again, Mizuno has 2 combinations. They have the STZ, which is a kind of central setup, and they've got the STX, which is going to be a little bit more draw biased. I chose the STZ for my swing. The club speed coming off the STZ, 97.1 mile per hour. The ball speed leaving at 140.8 miles per hour. Backspin, again, maybe a little lower than I like to see, but not too bad at 2,061 RPM. Launch angle, 12.8 degrees. peak height 26 yards, descent angle 32 degrees. By the way, I tested the 9.5 degree version of this. By the way, in all drivers, I tested either the 9 or the 9.5 degree options. I tried to get them as close as I possibly could. The carry distance, a beautiful, for me, 236 yards, and total distance 266. And let me tell you, I had a couple that went a little bit over 270 when I hit it really flush. So I really liked the performance out of the Mizuno. It came as a complete shock to me. I've swung a few Mizuno drivers in the past. This is by far leaps and bounds better than Mizuno has ever produced. I'm really excited about what they're doing over there. Now, taking the #1 spot is going to be the Taylormade Sim 2. No surprise if you actually watched that video. My swing speed was higher than some of these others at 101.5 miles per hour. Ball speed, scintillating 147.2 miles per hour. It was absolutely flying off the club face there. Backspin, pretty decent there at 2,195 RPM. Launch angle 12.7 degrees. Peak height 29 yards, and my descent angle at 35 degrees. And as you can see there, the distance by far the biggest of the bunch at 249 yards of carry, and my total distance at 276 yards on average. I did hit a few well over 280 there. I might have even brushed 290. It was very close anyways, but again, just incredibly excited about the performance of this driver. And in fact, that day I actually put my money down on this driver, because that's the thing for me that I'm trying to improve is distance. Again, for you it might be something else, but for me, I'm looking for more distance. I want to be able to put a pitching wedge in my hand instead of an 8-iron. I want to be able to put a 6-iron in my hand instead of a 4-iron. That's why distance means a lot to me right now. I'm getting a little bit up there in age, and if you are too and you need a little more distance, the Taylormade Sim 2 is by far clearly better than the rest. All right, the next category is one that you may be very interested in as well, which is accuracy. Accuracy is so important to people who are in that mid to high handicap range. Now, let me say, none of these drivers are horrible, and they're all better than the drivers that came out 3, 4, 5 years ago by leaps and bounds, but we've got to rank them, so here we go. Coming in at the bottom spot for me is going to be the Sim 2 with its lower spin is going to lead to a little bit less accuracy. Same thing with the Radspeed, which comes in at the #6 spot. Number 5 is going to be the Titleist TSI2. Coming in at number 4 for me is going to be the Srixon ZX5. At number 3, where we start to get pretty accurate here, is the Epic. And again, I was very impressed with the Epic Speed's accuracy, especially since I am an Epic driver user for the last 4 years. And I know that that dispersion was pretty tight compared to what I had ever used before, but this one is leaps and bounds better. So coming in at number 3 is the Epic Speed. Now, where it starts to get really good is the Ping G425, which takes our number 2 spot. It was very tight, and I think Ping claims that their moment of inertia is the highest of any other club at like 10,000, whatever scale they use. It definitely pays off, and that's a very accurate club. I had a lot of success with that one. But taking our number 1 spot once again in a very commanding way, which again surprised me, was the Mizuno STZ. Take a look at this on your screen. This is my test with the Epic, which is my gamer, against the Mizuno STZ, and you can see how tight of a circle I drew with the Mizuno. Really blew me away there, and I have nothing but glowing reviews to say for this. I don't know what the other reviewers have said, if they've seen the same thing that I have, but for me at least, with the shaft setup that I had at 60 grams stiff, I think it was a Tensei shaft, very accurate with the STZ, and you can see the smile on my face. It was awesome. All right, another category that if you're in the mid to high handicap range, you're gonna love is forgiveness. And there's definitely a big jump here in terms of forgiveness from one driver to the next. This is one of the categories that there was a bigger difference than most. So taking our number 7 spot is going to be the Srixon ZX5. If we look at number 6, in terms of forgiveness, the Titleist TSI 2 and 3, which makes total sense to me because Titleist has always sort of gone after that lower handicap market, so forgiveness maybe not their #1 priority there. Now where it starts to tighten up a little bit here in terms of forgiveness, we start with number 5, the Mizuno STZ. It was very forgiving in terms of contact that was a little higher or a little lower on the face. Not so good when I hit it a little heel side or toe side, but still pretty good. Coming in at number 4 for me is going to be the Epic. Again, because of that really good accuracy, that does also translate into some good forgiveness. Coming in the number 3 position for me is going to be the Ping G425, a very forgiving driver. If you saw my review of the Ping G425 irons, those are the most forgiving irons that I tested all year, and I was raving about how you could almost not mishit those. Well, the driver is pretty good too. It takes our 3rd spot. Coming in at number 2 in terms of forgiveness is the Cobra Radspeed, a really forgiving driver, I think, and I think again it has a lot of MOI, a lot of technology they built around forgiveness, and I really like that about the Radspeed. But number 1 for me is going to be the Sim 2. When I hit that less than perfect, I still got the distance and the carry that I was looking for. Whether it was toe, heel, low or high on the face, I consistently got big, long numbers out of that driver, and it was never too bad. So this next category is one that's a little bit subjective and objective at the same time. Let me explain. We're gonna see which one is better for your checking account, but we're also going to see what is that balance there? How good is this driver versus how much does it cost? And we are going to find the best balance point in terms of value based on my tests. Now we're going off MSRPs at the time of this video. It's now, what, February 16th, okay? So these prices may fluctuate over time, but this is the MSRP as most of these drivers hit the market. And for the Srixon, which is actually bottom on our list and first up here, the Srixon is $499 MSRP. You can see this really lagged in terms of performance, and it's somewhere in the middle there in terms of price. So for me, it offered the least amount of value. And again, if you go back to the stats in some of these other categories and see where they ranked and again, where they cost, I think you'll kind of figure out why I came to this conclusion. But coming in at number 6 is going to be the Epic. The Epic retails for $529. If it was me, I would say go buy the original Epic, maybe even the Epic Flash, and save a few dollars there if you're looking to go into the Callaway world. I'm not sure it's worth paying for the new Epic Speed. That's just me, and I'm sorry that I gotta tell it like it is. Coming in the number 5 position for me is going to be the Titleist TSI 2 and 3 with an MSRP of $549. These are the most expensive of the drivers that I tested. And in terms of stats, they're sort of middle of the pack, which is why, again, we got to put it down towards the bottom. Now, I do think it's a better performing driver overall than the 2 below it, which is why I've placed it where I have, even though it's the most expensive driver. In terms of value is going to be the Sim 2, and the Sim 2 is an incredible performer. It just also happens to be super expensive at $529, at least comparatively to the other drivers that we're looking at here. So it's gonna take our middle spot there, the 4th position. Coming in at number 3, where we start to realize some serious value proposition here, is going to be, in my opinion, the Cobra Radspeed at a really nice price of $449. A little bit less than the competition for pretty darn good results. So I really like where the Radspeed's sitting there in the market. Coming in at number 2 at $499 MSRP is going to be the Ping G425. Again, the performance of this driver is really good at sort of what seems to be a mid-market price at this point. I know, imagine that, $500 is mid-market. But the Ping G425, I think, offers a lot of bang for the buck, and that's why it takes my number 2 spot. Coming in at number 1 in terms of value is going to be the Mizuno STZ. It actually is the least expensive of all the drivers at $399. And when you combine that with an incredible tight dispersion, really great distance and stats, and really just the complete package, for me, this is the best value proposition on the market in terms of drivers in 2021. All right, now it's time for the hardest part, and that's to actually put all of these things together and give you my overall pound for pound champ. Now, if you've been following along, thank you very much. I'd love to hear what you think in the comments about what you think the best driver that you've tested or seen me test is. And I'm happy to entertain all the reasons why my rankings are complete crap and you hate them. There are no lack of opinions when it comes to golf technology, and I am certainly here to hear them. I will say again that my needs may not be your needs. So the way I've ranked these drivers might be different than what you would rank them. It is really important that you try them out for yourself. I hope this is a little bit of a shortcut for you, and that's what we're trying to do with this video, and just give you a little bit of my perspective and get you thinking when you're going through the sales process. So be sure to leave comments down below on if you think I'm right, if you think I'm wrong. But without further ado, here are my overall picks in 2021. Taking the bottom spot, which I think it took the bottom spot in every single category for me, and it is a 2020 driver, I should say, the Srixon ZX5. Again, don't think it offers a whole lot of value in terms of stats and things. It's not a bad driver, but there are better options in my opinion, at least for my game. It's gonna be number 7 for me. Coming in at number 6 for me is going to be the Cobra Radspeed. Again, a driver I'd be happy to game. However, for me, just did not quite perform to my expectations. And again, if you look at the value proposition in some of those other categories we looked at, it's number 6 for me. Coming in at number 5 for me is going to be the Epic Speed. I do like the way this driver looks. The stats are really good, including the dispersion, which I really liked. It's definitely leaps and bounds better than the Epic before that I played, but it just doesn't quite have the same performance as some of the other ones for me. Coming in the number 4 position is going to be the Titleist TSI2. Now I am glad that I took this driver out for a second time and got the right shaft on it, because it performed really well, as you saw in those stats. It's a little bit on the pricey side, especially if you get into some of those custom shafts. However, it's a really solid performer. I think this club suits more folks that are going to be lower handicappers, so sub 10, you should be considering this club. Taking my 3rd spot is going to be the Ping G425. Now, this is the driver that if you're in the mid to high handicap range, I think you're gonna really love, and you should absolutely take a look at. It's got the forgiveness, it's got really good distance. If you can get over the sound and maybe the feel of this thing, I think you're really gonna like it. In fact, some people are gonna love the way it feels and sounds. Again, that's a subjective thing, but the Ping G425 got a lot of value. It's priced really nicely. And again, if you're in that mid to high handicap spot, I think you're gonna really like how this thing performs. All right, now this is the moment of truth, right? We've got 2 contenders left. On one side, we've got the Sim 2 with its incredible distance. On the other side, we've got the Mizuno STZ with its incredible accuracy and dispersion. So tight, as we talked about before. So, listen, I would almost say we got a split decision here, but that wouldn't be fair to you. I've got to make my mind up. But I will say, if you're looking for accuracy, go with the Mizuno. If you're looking for pure distance, go with the Taylormade. For me, and what I'm looking for in my game, the number 1 spot for me is going to be, it's gonna be the Mizuno STZ. And that's because I think it offers the most complete package with that incredible value proposition. I think it's a club that a lot of different levels of golfer will really enjoy. And I just think Mizuno blew it out of the park. They're known for their irons. They're known for the way those things feel so buttery and so smooth, and this thing feels incredible. I did put my money down on the Taylormade Sim 2, which takes our number 2 spot, and it could easily have been number 1, but it's probably gonna be the driver I game because I'm looking for distance. But total package, I'm going to give it to the Mizuno STZ, and that might cause a firestorm here in the comments and I'm happy to hear what you have to say. But this is one solid performer if you get the right shaft set up for you. I think you've got to put this one on your list. Definitely put it in the tests and put it in your fitting. Make sure you get fit for it. And I'm sorry that Wade did not get fit for this. If you saw his fitting where he chose the Taylormade Sim 2, he didn't get a chance to actually swing the Mizuno. And I'm really sorry he didn't, because man, it's good. It was the last driver I tested. I did not think that it was going to be anywhere near as good as it was. I've been to the PGA show for the last 3 years, swung the Mizuno drivers every year that they come out. They always release this time of year, like January, February. And man, leaps and bounds over there at Mizuno. My hat is off to those guys. I'm really happy about it too, because I love Mizuno. I play Mizuno irons. I will be putting, I know it's weird, but I will be putting the Sim 2 in my bag, but I might just pick up a STZ as well as a second driver. Remember when Phil Mickelson used to play too? That might be me. So anyway, both of them solid. Well, to wrap things up here, I've got to say this has been the most fun in terms of a year of releases that I've ever had. Generally, there's one or two that are really standouts. Every driver this year is really good, and it was such a pleasure to swing them all. I am super tired. I've swung a lot of clubs. I've hit a lot of shots over the last 2 weeks, but it was all worth it. I hope you enjoyed me putting this together for you, and I hope it gives you some insight into the drivers and the options that you've got here in 2021. Please do hit the subscribe button. It helps me immensely if you enjoyed this video. It'll also give you the opportunity to take a deeper dive into your favorite driver that I reviewed here and look at all the stats and really geek out over them one by one. Thanks so much for joining me, and I hope I'll catch you back here very soon on Let's Play